More construction woes for BTO buyers. 5 public housing projects face delays after the main contractor pulls out over financial difficulties. For more, we're joined by Edward T., Assistant Professor of Law at SMU, who specialises in real estate and property law. Professor T., what contractual issues typically arise when a main contractor, is unable to complete a project like this?
Right. So I think you got to think about it from maybe at least 3 perspectives. The relationship between the main contractor and the subcontractor, the relationship between the main contractor and the developer, and the relationship between the developer and the end users or customers. There are different contractual issues which arise for each one of them. Now, when a main contractor is unable to deliver, the main recourse would be compensatory damages. And this is usually effected by the liquidated damages in the contract that the parties would have entered into. But obviously, when a main contractor cannot deliver, there'll be a lot of knock-on effects at the subcontractor level and at the client level as well.
So where does that leave everybody else? What recourse do HDB and flat buyers have in this situation?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Now, for HDB itself, they would have entered the arrangement with the main contractor via a document called the Public Sector Standard Conditions of Contract. And HDB can have recourse to the security deposit as well as payment guarantees, which they would typically have obtained via this standard form contract to partially or hopefully fully mitigate their losses. But of course, if the main contractor is unable to make any further payment because it is completely out of pocket, then HDB may go partially uncompensated. Now, as for the relationship between the flat buyers and HDB, that is governed by what is called agreement for lease. Under the agreement for lease, HDB would have said that by a certain date, the flat would be delivered to the flat buyer. Now, under this agreement for lease, only 5% deposit is paid and the remaining 95% is paid only on the handover. So to some flat buyers, they might be very happy that they are not going to have to pay this 95%. They might well be happy with the current living conditions and they can draw down that loan later on. For the rest of the flat buyers who might be in a hurry to move out, maybe pressure from a spouse, etc., they would have, HDB has last month said that on an appeal basis, they would consider waiving any penalties, i.e. return you the 5% deposit if there was a delay on a case-by-case basis. So those are some of the potential outcomes in this matter.
And moving things forward, how difficult is it to bring in new contractors on board to continue with the work?
Bringing in new contractors, a new main contractor to come in may not necessarily be the easiest thing to do. There will certainly be a time and cost delay. There might be a valuation dispute about the value of the current works in progress. Between when the new contractor comes in, he has to consider, what is the position of the current subcontractors. The subcontractors may not be happy to continue working if, for example, they have not been paid by the main contractor. So these are some of the issues that could arise. A lot of manpower issues, HR issues. Are all the contracts novated to the new main contractor? These are some of the very, whole series of knock-on effects that would arise when there's a breach at the site of the main contractor, or when there's, even if it's not a breach, an inability to complete the works.
And speaking of knock-on effects, Professor, would there be perhaps any on other BTO projects or perhaps even on the property market?
Yes. So I think that there might be some upward pressure for resale flats as well as condominium projects, particularly from buyers who feel that they cannot wait any longer. They're going to buy a resale flat. They're going to buy a private condominium, which is already completed. And this is because even if a new contractor comes in, there are only so many construction workers in our country. in Singapore. And these are going to be spread over the many developments, whether it's public or private, which are already in play. So you have only so many engineers, you have only so many architects, you have only so many workmen who are going to do the work. Singapore is not the only country facing a construction delay crunch. It's across the world we have this problem. So in the short term, the increase in construction costs caused by COVID-19, the delays in your manpower arrival, your delays in your arrival of materials, plus pressure from wanting a new house could force prices up in the short to medium term, I think.
You mentioned some of the challenges being faced. In light of them, like the pandemic, for example, what can actually be done to prevent things like this from happening again?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure whether a lot can be done because, this is a frustrating event. This is a force majeure, which is not unique to Singapore. It's a global phenomenon. How can we prepare for something which nobody could have imagined a couple of years ago? Now, obviously, from HDB's perspective, they could, for example, increase the security deposit or increase the advance payment guarantees. But if they do so, would this make it too difficult for the main contractor to do its work? So there always has to be a balance between what are the financial guarantees that can be put in any contract with how onerous it would be for the main contractor and other subcontractors to execute their work. You see, so I think it's a balanced thing to consider. Yeah.
Professor T, thank you very much for your perspective on this. Assistant Professor of Law Edward T from SMU.